Hello, and welcome to a Reinvent Yourself podcast. I'm Lisa Andrea, and I want to thank you for listening. My goal is to share insights from successful people in order to help others with the reevaluate, restore, and reinvent journey. My guest today is Kelly Krotine. Am I pronouncing it right? Krotine. Kelly Krotine, a California board licensed acupuncturist and herbalist. While working long hours for the film industry, she received regular acupuncture treatments as a way to maintain health and balance. The positive effect from treatments for sciatica, digestion, migraines, and fatigue compelled Kelly to help others regain and maintain their health and vitality. So, Kelly reinvented her career by going back to graduate school for acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, one of which I'm a big fan. She attended Southern California University of Health Sciences at the recommendation of the acupuncturist she was seeing. Kelly uses her intuitive knowledge as well as her clinical experience to understand the root of each person's imbalance. By using acupuncture, and I'm going to ask for the pronunciation of that. Qigong, and herbs, Kelly will facilitate the body's natural healing ability to regain optimal health. She will also give nutrition and lifestyle advice in order to sustain wellness. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much.
And thank you for joining me today. I'm going to ask you to come a little closer.
Okay. I want to thank you for doing this because I think we can't get enough positive examples of people trying to, and women especially, trying to go on a path that's less traveled. And I think it's really important.
My whole thing is about following your bliss, right? Finding out what your place is in the universe. And when you do that, it seems that the universe talks back to you and gives you those opportunities, right? When you find what it is that you're supposed to do in life.
Right, and I think that's where the intuition part comes through. You were, asking me about intuition and how it's kind of negatively viewed in the workplace, and I think intuition is everything. And I think that people often get intuition and instinct mixed up. I think sometimes we talk about our gut feeling, and that's more of an instinctual, and that can help us. It's not a negative thing. It can help us in certain situations, but it's also just about survival. Now, intuition is more about wisdom. It's about ultimately knowing what to do to help the situation, help others, and know exactly how to do that, with this wisdom that we get from within ourselves if we just really keep looking. And I think that's ultimately the power that we have from that wisdom.
Thank you, because we were talking earlier that intuitive knowledge was a phrase that that's been viewed negatively when women have that in the more like I came from the telecom industry and that type of industry. In your case, it's actually a real positive thing. And thank you for that explanation. So when did you realize you wanted to reinvent yourself, and how did that come to you? We kind of touched a little bit on you were a fan of acupuncture. I'm a fan of acupuncture, but I've never thought about being an acupuncturist. So how did that come about?
Well, that came about, it's interesting because when I was still in the film industry, and I worked with a lot of women that were also camera assistants, and we would sometimes have brunch together and try to brainstorm, like, okay, because we all kind of thought, well, I don't know if we could sustain this for, the longevity of our lives, and it's pretty difficult, work with the hours, the equipment, and so we would go and try to brainstorm, like, what career could we find, for ourselves next, and, it was interesting because we never really came up with anything. Until, at one point I was with a different friend, and she was telling me how her husband, who was an assistant editor in the film business, actually went back to school to study psychology. And it was because he wanted to help people, and I think that was the trigger. Just thinking of a career, what's your next career move, for me wasn't what triggered it. It was like, how can I be of help to people in a more, I guess, holistic way. And I did struggle with leaving the film industry because also in my philosophy I thought, well, I can be helpful, to many people in any work that I'm doing. There's always opportunity to be helpful. And so I thought, and if I'm, a wise person and I'm using my intuition, why can I just sustain that and be satisfied with that in the film business? But there was also something else in me that was just kind of saying, like, well, keep looking. And when he, mentioned that he went back to school to study psychology to help people, I was like, oh. And all of a sudden, like, acupuncture just popped into my mind. And I was like, well, I get acupuncture and it's fine, but I really don't like needles. So I was like, am I going to be able to administer the needles? But, it's such a different thing. It's such a different experience. And the needles are, not like an injection needle. Yeah. And so that's kind of, I think the trigger was for me, how can I help people more?
Wow. So when you decided to go from receiving the acupuncture treatment to administering it as a new career, how did you craft that plan? I mean, this is the first time I'm interviewing someone who actually had to go back to school for what it is that they want to do. Right. So how did that, because that's a good part of this whole reinvention process, is the whole plan. How did you do that?
Well, like I said, the idea of acupuncture was pretty strong in my mind, and at that point I was like, I just have to do it. I just have to find a way to do it. So while I was still working, I also had to take some extra science classes, which I did through like community college while I was working, just like one at a time, and worked full time in the film industry. And then once those were finished, then it was kind of very serendipitous because I was ending a TV show, and then like right in January of the next year is when I would start the school. So I think during work I filled out all the applications and all of that, and then I just began school in January of 2009. And for me, a lot of times it's just, if I get this sort of insight, there's no stopping me, and I'm just like, okay, this is what I have to do. No matter how I have to do it, I'm just going to do it. And it was definitely challenging financially.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a big deal. You have to really plan that out.
Yeah. Well, at the time, I was working in the film industry, saving money to actually buy a house, and in LA, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
So at the time too, I thought, I'm like, well, I could buy a house and not be so happy, living in this house, or I could use that money to go back to school. So, wow. That's what I did.
Wow, that was a big decision too.
Yeah, it was a big decision, but it wasn't, it was just so apparent that that's what I had to do.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. What step in the journey, this reinvention journey, had the most obstacles and difficulty, and why?
Well, I think, like I said, in the very beginning, when I thought that I should be able to be helpful, in the film business as well, and I did struggle with that, like, philosophically, because I thought, if I'm a wise person, I could just be, helpful in anything I do. But so I think that decision was probably the biggest obstacle. Once I started school, I just, I was elated to be in school.
Oh.
Every time I would commute to school, I would think in my car, I'm like, this is great. I'm going back to school. This is great.
And how old were you so it was 2009? I mean, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Let's see. I was 42 at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And did you think about, okay, there's so many acupuncturists here, how am I going to get a job? What, did you think about even that, or you were just like, I know this is going to happen? And
yeah, that did cross my mind when we had one of our business classes. They were talking about, okay, we'll do a demographic of different areas to see how many, and this area is pretty saturated, but again, I think if you're doing something that you're following your heart and you're, just so dedicated to it that I never had the feeling that it's not going to work out.
Fantastic.
I was really so dedicated to the study and the work and, this journey of, discovering. It's, helped me to discover myself and more. And by connecting with the people that I connect with, it's a great learning experience. And I think that's also part of my philosophy in life, that, we build on these experiences and connections with people. And that's one of the, more important things in life.
Yeah, which leads me to the next question, because the people around you, your support system, mentors, are so important. I mean, to me, building relationships and keeping them, even after leaving a job, there are key people that that you'll be friends with and you'll be interactive with, and they will help you in some way, and you can help them in some way in life, and that's a big deal for me too. Mm-hmm. Where do you think you got the most assistance in moving in that right direction? What for you? What was who were the people and around you? I mean, you don't necessarily have to name names, but where did you get the most assistance, you think, and the most support from?
Well, definitely I got so much support from my family and my partner, Colin, and they were very, very helpful. Okay, so yeah, my family and Colin were so supportive. I think all of the professors at SCU, at Southern California University of Health Sciences, were wonderful, and they were so supportive. I know people, in their high school years or their, more formative years have had mentors, but at SCU, I've had the most mentors and the best examples of mentors for me, and helping me through the studies, and I've had so many different mentors. I think we learn from many people throughout our lives, in different situations, and I really just try to reflect on all of the situations that I've involved in, and see what I'm learning from each situation. Mm-hmm.
What do you do when you were going through this schooling? Was there a period of bad days, or when you felt discouraged, or even after you finished, was there any period when you feel discouraged? I kind of like to tell people, how do you get through those periods?
I love to take walks, like in the woods, or when alongside the ocean. I think nature really helps to ground us, and there's such a balance in nature. If we just are quiet and kind of listen to that balance, it will help us to regain our balance as well. And so a lot of times I would just go on, solitary walks and just kind of soak in nature and, the trees and the ground and water and the elements.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because everybody has their space of where they feel peaceful. Mm-hmm. And so you've explained what yours is, and I'm sure a lot of people have the same feelings about taking a walk. Ocean, I know another person and for me too, taking a walk close to the ocean is really healing. But everyone has that place, and that's a good place to go when you're having a bad day or you're feeling discouraged. That's really a good piece of advice. So we kind of talked a little bit about this, but what priority did you give financial goals when you made this decision, knowing like how much you would make as an acupuncturist and how it kind of compared to what you were making now at that time? Where did that come in? Did that come in any of the decision making?
Yeah, it's like I'm like the opposite of what someone would plan for in that respect, because even when the first tax accountant I had, he looked at my numbers from the the film business, and then he was like, "Oh, why are you giving this up?"
yeah, that's tough.
And I said, because ultimately, I want to help people. And of course, there are financial sacrifices I knew I would be making, but I was willing to do that. So I'm like the opposite of, setting your financial goals. I actually struggled with, I sometimes would think, God, I wish I really could just treat everyone for free, because I don't really, sometimes, I don't feel comfortable charging people, and, but and you have to survive. I have to, rent this space, and I have to, do certain things. And it was helpful too, talking to a friend of mine, who's a Feldenkrais practitioner. which is, sort of movement work, and it's an alternative method too. And she was saying, well, you do have to pay for, your expenses. You have to, so charging, a fee for your services is actually, think of it as paying for all the expenses that, to keep you running, not necessarily what you're giving to the person.
Yeah, because in order to be able to do what you do, you have to eat, you have to live. I mean, you have to be healthy and grounded yourself.
I have to buy the needles.
Yeah, you have. I mean, other than just the regular thing of other expenses,
right?
You actually have to keep yourself healthy in order to be able to help other people. Right?
Yeah. So to me, making the financial sacrifice was part of it, and I realized that, and I knew that's what I would be doing, and I accepted that.
Yeah. So now that you're living this, how I call a more authentic self, your life with a more authentic self in both your life and your work, overall, how does that make you feel as a person in this world?
Just very content.
That's a good word.
Yeah, I feel very content with being able to put my spiritual values and ethics into practice, and helping others to discover themselves in that way, if that's what they want to do. It's more than just the physical health with Chinese medicine and acupuncture. It's more about the mental health, and if people want to go to the, kind of uncovering their spiritual essence too, it helps them with that as well.
Now you didn't just go to graduate school. When you came out of graduate school, the first place you worked, you have to tell a story about this because you actually took over the practice.
Right.
So it was an interesting story, so I just wanted to hear how that happened.
Well, the last, I guess, trimester of my schooling, the acupuncturist that I'd been seeing here called me up and said, well, do you know anyone that's interested in purchasing the practice? I'm thinking of leaving the practice. And I was like, well, is she asking me, or is she just, because she knew I was going back to school for it. Obviously, she suggested the school. So I took that as, well, this was, the doors were kind of opening. And while I felt very overwhelmed at first, again, I had that voice that just kind of said, just go for it. This is what you have to do. And so that was another door that pretty much just opened. And then I, interned with her for about 8 months.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
This is what your story is reinforcing. Part of what my workshop is about is telling the universe and finding what you're supposed to do, which I've read a lot of Joseph Campbell, the mythologist.
Love Joseph Campbell.
Yeah, about his definition of following your bliss, and how when you put it out there, when you start following your path, your right path, that the universe just gives you opportunities, and people start talking to you, and that's exactly what happened to you. Yeah. You put it out there, you started your path, and somebody just said, hey, you want to buy my practice? And you're like, oh, the universe is talking back to me. This is what I should do. Don't even be scared. Again, women sometimes are afraid to take the next step, or take a step that's never been taken, a path they've never taken. And you have the courage when you know that it's the right path that you're going to go for.
Yeah, it just propelled me forward. I mean, I'd never owned a business in my life, and never had, and that was a bit of a struggle navigating all that. She gave me some guidelines, but you have to navigate that too, and that was, that's not my favorite part of it, but I got through it, and I learned a lot from that as well. And I think, it's you do have to just take those opportunities, I think, and trust yourself.
Yeah, that's a good point. So what would you like to share with others as what you would say is the most important piece of advice in embarking on a reinvention journey?
Listen. And listen to yourself, we were just talking about, when those things happen, sometimes it's just a very small voice in your head that's, you get this little tiny voice, but pay attention to that little tiny voice, and just really follow that, and be a good listener to others as well, because the connection with people, I think, is very important. And being able to really listen to each other, that's a very helpful step in the life's path as well.
That's great advice. Did I miss anything? I try not to make these podcasts too long so that people can actually listen and understand things, and I know everybody's so busy, but is there anything that I missed in asking that you can share about your journey that you'd like to share with others?
Well, I think, it's funny. I remember when I was in undergraduate college, and there was a woman in our dorm going around asking if we thought that being a woman, I think this was so long ago now, but I think the way she phrased it was limiting to us in our choices of what we wanted to do. And being 20, of course, you're like you know everything, and you're like, yeah. And I was like, no, absolutely not. I'm going to do whatever I want, in that state of mind when you're 20. But I look back on that now, and I think we shouldn't limit ourselves, even though I know there can be obstacles. We should still have that idea, like, yes, we can do whatever we want to do. We can choose to do whatever we want to do. I mean, I got into the film industry without ever having anyone in my life, in my family, in the film industry, into the camera department, which is more male dominated. And I think, we have to just really set our ideals high for ourselves and not limit ourselves.
Like the hashtag I Can Do It from what was just the Golden Globes when she did her speech. All of a sudden my mind's forgetting, but we can all do what it is that we want to do. So Kelly Krotine has a acupuncture and wellness business in Woodland Hills, correct?
Sherman Oaks,
thank you. And a phone number that people get a hold of you by, or should they go on your website? You have a website?
Yeah, I have a website. It's all one word, KELLYK acupuncture.com. And the phone number is also 818-981-3440.
Thank you so much on this rainy Southern California day. I came out to visit, and thank you so much, Kelly, for telling your story. There was a lot of information here that I know a lot of people will find really helpful, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Well, I appreciate you doing this. It's a great service to everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to a Reinvent Yourself podcast, and stay tuned for more coming up in every other week or so.